Hey everyone, we're back. Welcome back to the channel. We're going to be exploring all things 3D modeling today in Blender. Today it's an exciting tutorial going step by step, actually thanks to the Punisher, because he has, if you don't know his channel, he's a great 3D artist, very talented, and he holds these challenges off of his platform that are always really fun to do. And this challenge that he's bringing up is to actually do a vehicle sequence. So it could be a motorcycle, a car, or a truck. And we're going to go with a vehicle because, as we've covered in this channel before, we're building out this world for an art project, and part of that world is vehicles and the cars. So it's a perfect chance to revisit some of the files already started and start fine-tuning them according to the mood board that I've set up. So as I've explained before too, this is an integral part of the process for me, is to grab reference images and reference drawings to start working off of. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to go with our base files, and we're going to start tweaking these in order to get some design out for this challenge. Now the challenge ends first week of May, May 7th, May 17th. I'll have to double check on that, but basically a month to get the animation super fine tuned. So that gives me a couple weeks to focus on the modeling. So let's get right into it. Want to create realistic objects in Blender? Well, basically, we're going to be able to achieve that by following these real-life constraints. Not only starting off from a model that used the drawings and has this already in the file, but I've actually used the help of AI. I've been trying this different one from Mid-Journey. It's called Blue Willow. I wrote about it in my last email for Monday kickoffs. If you're interested in hearing about these different tools that I use, you can always go through the links on my profile and find out how to get those news from me. So this is something that's trying to compete with Midjourney. Granted, it's not as high quality as the latest version that came out this past week for Midjourney, but it came out with some pretty cool results and a lot of variations that are closely related to each other, but give subtle hints as to the different directions that we could take for these vehicles to make many different ones from the same base file. So let's get started right away. We'll get into our 3D file, and I'm going to find my previous car models. So we'll go into our project files. And now this model has a lot of the things already set up from the very beginning, such as the technical drawing and the base body of the vehicle. So essentially now we want to start fine-tuning the body of the vehicle to also start to match some of these AI-generated images. Give that a second to load, as it has a few more things than just a car model. It's a whole situation. In any case, as we look through our models here, I'm also going to be using some other reference photos to create variations. So the main thing here is all these images are based off of an Audi type car. There is like a Porsche, I think a Ferrari too, like thrown in there. But the idea would also be to sort of arrive at a base concept of a car such as this, and to then start, being able to do other car models. So the base file works well enough, like as a base, that we can take any different direction that we might want. So with that, we'll get into the modeling. So I'm actually going to move over to the modeling workspace over here. And as you can see, we worked in a configuration where we only have to worry about one side of the vehicle or one side of the model. We don't have to necessarily be looking out for making sure that things are done equally on both sides. It's just a much more efficient way to work if you have one side of the car that you're working on and the other side it's just going to be a copy. It's like it doesn't want to cooperate with me today. There we go. Having some issues. I'm going to hide out everything else in the model that I don't currently need. I'm also going to delete these spheres and do a save as. Create a folder for this project. don't have to always include dates. It just helps so much along with the title. I know you can see date created is like something that gets embedded with the folder, but as a naming convention, it just helps to sort things chronologically. And we're going to call this one our Audi TT remake. Okay. Now, some items to unhide from this model would be these reference planes, reference images. If I move this one lower so that it makes, so I can kind of see it underneath as I'm working. And if I go to my top view, oops, not rendered. If I go to wireframe view from the top view, I'll be able to see through to the drawing below and be able to adjust the shape of the car to meet that. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set up in a 2-view type of situation. Actually, like we're going to make it 3. I'm going to always keep an eye out for the top view of the car and one of the flat views, as well as going into my 3D view and viewing this in material preview mode. And just keep an eye on how this is looking. I'm going to hide out my different toolbars here, so I don't need my tool settings, I don't need my toolbar. Yep, there we go. I think that's as bare bones as I can get it. Make the most out of that screen real estate. And from the front view now, I could see that I actually am fitting this profile a bit better than the top view. I'll go to my side view. Now, the side view needs some work. I see here I have a secondary mesh on the inside. I think I did that for rendering purposes. The side view needs a little bit of work, and so does the top view. So we'll start there. First off, we see we have an area that we need to pull out from away from the car. All right, before we move forward into all our detailing and all our surfaces, I just want to be able to get where these curves are supposed to lie proper. So I'll tab into our model here, and I'll hit Alt-click in order to select this whole loop. And I can then scale it, although, no, I don't want to do that. I'm actually going to just grab some of the loops right here at the very edge of the car that I want to pull out, and I'm going to turn on proportional editing. And I do that by just clicking this little symbol up at the top, and a smooth edit is going to work out fine. So I can start stretching out that side of the car. So it's not working out as fine as I thought, so I'll scroll up, and as you could probably see here, my gray circle around my cursor is getting larger, and I'm having more influence on more edges of the model. So now I can properly move this over and stretch the rest of the model with it. We'll do the same thing now, except I'll switch to vertex mode to grab some of these points here. That looks like the right edge. And we'll start to pull that out. Again, with that proportional editing still on. Great. All right. Another little trick, we go back into the edit mode. If we have our edge mode on, I'm going to need to clean up this file a little bit because we're having some quite serious lag when I go in and out of edit mode. Here we go. I'm just going to delete some of the lights in the scene, the base plane, and some other geometries we're not really using. Okay. There we go. So, as I was saying, we can grab one of these edges. So I want to be able to find more or less the horizon line of the car, knowing that from the top view, we have this sort of very harsh edge on the hood, which more or less is followed through by this line. So what I'm actually going to do before anything else is grab these vertices and start fitting that hard edge. That makes it part of the horizon line. I'm also going to decrease my zone of influence here for the proportional editing. So I'm not grabbing a whole. This is even though it's represented as a 2D circle in all these views, it is like a 3D sphere. So you got to account for how close the other points are to this one in every axis. I'll move this point over so that I get the edge of the vehicle lining up just nicely with that one. And do the same thing for all views. That seems like it's following that well. Maybe just a little bit lower. And all right, I think we're looking good. Great. So now what I'm going to do in order to start detailing is start pulling things off from this car. So now that we made that little adjustment to the front, and we might have to make some adjustments to the back, but now that the front is looking really solid, close to the shape that I want for the car, before I complicate this geometry anymore, what I want to do is basically start pulling off faces for the different sections of this car. So again, if I go to my top view and I start seeing what pieces of this car do I need for the hood, well, I'm going to need probably up to the front of this one, yep, go all the way over to the side, and I'll stop it right there while we're cutting off for that other shape. So I'll carve out this shape now for the hood, and obviously everything in between. Okay, so there's the base geometry for our hood. I'll go ahead and hit Shift D to duplicate those faces, hit Escape, so it slaps back down. And we're going to right click and we're going to do Separate by Selection. There we go. Now we have our hood. So if I click on this surface here, I can now start manipulating the surface on its own and seeing how the model starts to play out as I build off of it. So what I can do is add a modifier, call it Solidify, or Select Solidify. It's already called that. We'll put that, not sure why I have a Boolean going on. I think that was the other model that I had going on, but I want the Solidify to go before the subdivision. And if I open up the settings for Solidify and I start increasing the thickness, I can see that it's actually going down into the car. So I can either go into a negative thickness, or the proper way to do it would probably be to go to hit Tab, A to select everything, go to Mesh, Normals, and then flip them. So with the normals flipped, now I'm extruding upward. Okay. So another thing we have going here that's not so much in our favor is the edges rounding out. So what we can do here is we hit, go into edge mode, select this whole side with Alt click, and now we press N to show on the right side for the item. And under transform here, item, we have mean crease. So if I increase the crease, you see that that edge starts to sharpen as that value grows. So we'll zoom in a bit more. And there we go, we got our crease. I'll bring down the thickness over here, just so that we have a bit of thickness added onto that and it grows out. Very nice. So now for the rest of the shape that we see here from the top, the front is looking a bit too square. So what I want to do is actually sharpen out this side over here, which is getting probably modified by the subdivision. So if I disable subdivision here, there we go. We see I actually have a hard edge there, and subdivision is rounding that out. So again, I would hit Tab, and I would now select this corner edge here, and same thing as before, I would just increase the mean crease and the mean bevel weight. No. There we go, the vertex crease. So we lower that so we get a bit of a sharper edge. That's not quite enough. We really want that to harden all the way to the side. So I think we're going to have to add a loop cut here. So Control R, so we can get it right on that edge. And I don't want to bring it all the way to the edge, because you see there it sort of breaks the geometry or pushes it down. So I'm just going to bring it close enough. So I'll type like 0.95. There we go. And that puts that other loop cut close enough to that side where it sharpens out the whole thing without necessarily breaking the geometry or having to, finish with re-rounding the whole model in order to fit that part. Okay, so now that we have the hood on, we have some contours to the hood. So we have two lines that are running right over this mesh line. Show you on this side. There's a line that's running right under this edge here. And what that is a little, it sort of picks up a little bit from both sides. So what we'll do here is similar to before, we'll hit Control R to add a loop cut. We can do that again to 0.95, maybe just 0.90. We do that for both sides. So from this side, it would be negative 0.9 because it's based off of the center. And I'll switch over to wireframe. Or not wireframe, I'll just hide my solidify modifier so you see what I did. So basically, I added these loop cuts, and by putting -9 on this one that I'm creating now, and 0.9 on this one, I ended up getting this sort of 3 loop cut set. Then I select this one in the middle, I hit G, turn off proportional editing so that I can hit G, Z, and just pull that up just a little bit. And we see since we have our modifier, not our modifier, yeah, our modifier, the mirror action, we're getting it over on the other side as well. So we'll turn on solidify, we'll see how our job here is looking. So not bad at all. What I am noticing is, I mean, there's some weirdness happening at this edge, so it'd probably be worth adding a loop cut that meets the front fairly closely as well, but not all the way, maybe around, again, I'll turn off solidify so you see what I'm doing here. I'll add a loop cut that pulls up to the front, and maybe at 0.8. Ooh, negative 0.8. So we have it snap towards the front. Okay, not too worried about this clipping happening with the base model. So let's actually differentiate that. In the viewport display, I'm just going to change the color of this object to something else. Display as a solid. There we go. Keep the wireframe. Huh. I thought it would show me the, done this in the past where it's just showing me the color there, but we're not getting that this time. What I can do is just give it its own material so I can at least differentiate it over here on the left hand side. So we'll actually make that like a dark gray. Cool, so we start to see those reflections. And now the reason I added in that lip right here is because I'm going to have to select this whole edge. I'm going to have to hit S, Z, basically flatten out all these edges, right, into just a horizontal line. So I have my crease slightly disappear into the bottom of the car. But also, if I look from the side, this little part of the nose actually comes out in front of the shape of the car and then cuts back, right, into, and then the part that cuts back is actually part of the hood. So what we're going to do here is from the side, in order to get that here for this model, I'm going to grab that edge, and I can see that perhaps I already pulled forward, and what I should be doing is pulling the hood back, but it's fine. For effect, I'm just going to accentuate that, turn proportional editing back on, and pull that piece of the hood forward, just like so, kind of following the shape that I have over here. Again, not worrying about the clipping with the base part of the model, because again, we have that solidify modifier adding thickness to the hood. Cool. Now we have that set up. We'll move over into the front piece of the car. So this is a very complex piece. So I'm not going to worry about the details too much. I'm just going to worry about the general shapes that we have here for the front. I can get a good view of what's happening in my material preview there. I'm probably done. I'm going to want to just keep this one into front view, which means I want to hide my back photo reference. And potentially even in this view, if I go and hit N, and I go to my view. There we are. I'm going to lower my clip, or increase my, no, lower, lower my end clipping for the view here so that I can basically, there we go. We're basically eliminating what we can see so that I can only see half the car. Because if I see the back faces, that's going to confuse me a bit more. So here, I'm only looking at the nose of the car. I'm not able to see through to the back of the car. And with that, I'm also going to hide the toolbars here. Forgot to do that earlier. All right. Yeah. Let's go ahead and do this next piece. So I'll tab out of editing the hood there, and I'll tab into this front of the car. I'll go into my top view wireframe and select all the nose pieces. So that would be everything up until the, gotta be in face selection mode, and select all the face pieces up until the headlight, right? Excuse me. Oh, it woke me up a little bit. So we select all these face pieces. We see a seam right here to the side, so I just want to select the ones that are right under that. And I can already start to see that I could do with another loop cut here, just to kind of change the topology of this a little bit. By the way, for those that don't know, I hit C in order to get the brush selection tool, so I can just kind of like brush in what I want to use for my hood. All right, double check that selection in 3D. So got way too much off on the side. So I can just shift click those out. I do want these side ones. However, the line that's cutting up through the headlight, I think I can just do away with that one. I work with that. Perhaps I should be having another loop cut there, but it's fine. I'll just build out the rest of the model, adjusting for the shape. Okay, so now we have that selected. We want to separate it out. Oop, I just noticed another couple that I don't want here. Yeah, see, this is where it gets a little weird. How the nose is kind of pinched in. And this is all because I offset that front of the box. If you want to check that back live stream on how that topology came to be, which might be working a little bit against me, but at this point, I think I can work around it. Well, for next time, topology is definitely something I'd want to look into a bit more and be careful and mindful of, so I don't have to spend time cleaning up like I'm going to have to right now. In any case, we'll shift D on this one as well, and then escape so that it snaps back. And same as before, we right click and we separate by selection. All right. Looks like I accidentally grabbed the back face there, but no problem. Go to solid view. Select this front piece of the car now for the hood. Tab into it. I'll just delete. Trying to delete that face I accidentally grabbed. Oh, it's over here. Ooh, I selected a bunch of the side skirt by accident. I just got rid of that, so I'm just working with the front. And now to get this to fit a little bit better to the shape of the car, it's going to be a little tricky. So now that I have only my front pieces selected, I'm going to trust that I can just move these points around sort of willy-nilly, or like as I need to get this shape. And I'll use, I'm not going to use proportional editing. What I'm actually going to do is square out the shape of the car so I can work this grid a little bit easier. So if I select vertically this entire row, I can hit S, Y, or sorry, S, X, no, X, well, which one is it? It's S, X, Y. I think it's SY. So S to scale in the Y-axis, and then I'll hit 0. It might be X for you. Probably not Z if you selected a vertical line like me, but that just kind of sets off all these points in a vertical row. So I can now do the same thing over this row. Hit S, what was it, Y, and then 0. I'm just kind of squaring out the shape of these cells, so it's going to be a little bit easier to tweak the shape of this front. As you can see, I am actually going to have to scale in the z-axis. Turn off proportional editing. Turn off scale in the z-axis so I can pinch this a little bit, bring it down where it's supposed to be. Actually, I'm not sure that I do want to do that. I'm not going to mess with the vertical for now. I'm just going to focus on the horizontal axis. Okay, so again, in order to select this whole row, I just Alt-click, and there I have my whole row. And what I'm going to do, instead of actually flattening this one out to 0, like I did before on the SY axis, I'm actually going to go through the center point so it almost like flips over in the other direction, so that I can match this curve I have over here for the car a little bit more with that edge. So we can see what that looks like. There we go. Now I'm facing the front in that side view. So you see that there looks a bit more true to what I'd like, because I can now push this one over, push this one this way, start just moving these points so I match the contour of the vehicle. Make sure I select the right point using my 3D view. There we go. There's obviously a lot more loop cuts that we'll introduce to the model once we start messing around with all that detail that we see here. Now this point is a perfect opportunity to hit that corner right there, and then follow this other diagonal line here that runs that way. Now for the rest of these points that are running vertically, I'm going to scale once more in the y-axis. Actually, just slide them over the y-axis and just have them meet this edge panel. Probably going to also want to push these points forward as I see that it's like cutting into the car a little bit, or I might want to introduce another loop cut, because as I'm pulling these and lining them up to the diagonal there, we can see on the right hand side it's actually pinching into the car a little bit, which is not the intention. So we'll do some corrective surgery there in just a little bit. All right, now that I have that edge following through, I know that this loop cut, right, on the vehicle is essentially, as you can see here, marking out this front nose piece versus the side nose, right? The very side of the front. Okay. Now with that set, I'm going to hit some control loops here to start creating some thicknesses. So we see there, we can get the inside of the piece right here. And I'm actually going to need to create another set that's going to create a little bit of weirdness here with the topology, but it's all good when it comes out all said and done. So for that loop cut I just introduced, I'm now going to move these points in to line up for the inside. Bring these over so that they hit the inside curve of this panel. There we go. This is where you guys start getting a little bit of weirdness. All right. I'm also not too concerned with topology at the moment, as long as I get the shape, because there are also some tools that you can always use to rebuild the model, sort of fix the topology on it. Although if this were a chair, I'd be having a real easy time getting out these shapes. But a car just has some nuanced curves I just haven't tried before. And now that I know this over, I want to just welcome the viewers that came on. Thanks for coming in. Feel free to ask any questions at any time about the project, about Blender, about modeling. As you can see here, we're moving into the nitty-gritty of creating these different panels. So I'm going to move out of that piece. What I'm actually going to do is create a new face now to work off and use only this front grille. So I'm going to click over here, make sure I'm in face selection mode, hit C in order to select all these faces. Now I'm selecting all these that have the hexagonal pattern. I won't worry about where those top edges are because I can always adjust as I'm modeling there. And that just about does it. Start cleaning up some of these edges more to fit that front panel. Okay. So now that I have all that selected, I can hold Shift if I need to eliminate anything, my painting selection. And what I'm actually going to do is eliminate just that whole top row so I can keep a cleaner topology. Actually, all these little ones can go too. I just have that one point there to clean up, and then I'll just start pushing out into fitting that full front face. So we're kind of entering different levels of detail here, right? So we started with the box that yielded us the main shape of the car. Then we got into these different fascias or different body pieces of the car. And now we're getting a bit more detailed and actually picking out these different panels or different surfaces to break out. So I think always, you know, breaking things out, scaling down, not being afraid to just like copy this over and start working at it separately so that now, as I did before, separating this little panel, this little set of faces from this main set of front faces from the main body of the car means I can always sort of call back on that previous geometry and just start building on top of it. And you know, you would basically keep your entire process in the 3D model like that. It might be start getting heavy at one point. So once that starts happening, you can do save as and then just iterate that way. But yeah, I think just keeping a catalog of the process is really important, especially when doing something you're kind of new to. So now that we have this whole panel set up, I'll do an Alt-click twice to select the whole face of it right there, and I can see my outline that I'm working with. You know, at this point in time, I'm also just going to select everything else and hit H on it, as I just want to focus on this one panel and fixing that to the front of the car. So I'm going to grab that one rogue point over here, go into vertex mode, and just shift that over. I know I'm shifting everything in the y-axis. This is where I might have been able to have been cleaner about this sooner, so I don't have all these overlapping points, but now it's okay. And it's just a little bit of tinkering and tweaking, and all this gets smoothened out later and rebuilt and cleaned up by this other process I'm going to use. So again, just trying to fit that shape as best I can. All right. That's looking good right there. Ooh, except it's a bit too far back. If I look at the side view, it does curl back like that, but I imagine it actually curls in a bit more gradually. So that might be just a matter of now grabbing these different sides and pushing those on the x-axis. I think this corner just might be peeled back too far. There we go. And I can start rounding out the whole face to meet the front of the car. If I go to my side view. Yeah, so I do want it to peel back, actually. So I want this one to peel back, and I want both of these to also peel back in the x-axis. There we go. If I had a higher res image of this front nose piece, I'd be able to know where that seam is, but I'm just going through the hatch there that I think is the hexagon. Higher res reference photos, the better, obviously. So now that we have that, and it fits, you know, I know that the rest of the car grid is going to follow with this. I'm going to look into some quick, easy moves that I could do that could just kind of introduce a bit more interesting results to the shape of the car. I don't like this that's going on here, so as I've shown before, I mean, a quick fix for that can be going into sculpting mode and having the smooth tool set up and then just brushing over that edge repeatedly. There we go. I'm going to increase the intensity with Shift F. Ooh, too intense. Lower that intensity. There we go. We'll get that all cleaned up. Nice. So as I was saying, more interesting curves. Going back to this mood board, we can check out some of the front of car references that I have over here. So let's see, I just seen one. Or did I see a back of a vehicle? Well, we can go with this one. So this one's actually similar, one of the AI generated. We have our mesh, right? And we see here, actually being able to notice that this one is pulling out an edge from that mesh. So it'd be interesting right now to basically to pull out those faces so we get this wireframe type effect around it, and then use that base surface as our hex pattern, and then just have that hex pattern also. It actually offsets the that's interesting actually. Now you have this area here, which is like pulling sort of straight down in front of the car, and then this line up here that's pulling back onto the hood, right? And then you kind of have the hex pattern doing something opposite. It's like pulling forward and a bit higher to meet that edge right there, and then it's pulling back towards the bottom, so you get this double diagonal type effect going on. So it's again, it's like cars are just so dang subtle. If I look at the other ones, you know, they kind of look like they go straight down, or they fit that, you know, just nicely. Or this one has like an LED trim or whatever that is. But you know, it added that angle in there. I think that's a nice little detail. So I'm going to go for that. Go back into our modeling mode, and again, Alt-click twice to select this whole edge, and I can hit E to just extrude those edges forward. Now I am getting an issue here, which is I'm grabbing the middle, and I shouldn't. No, I shouldn't. I was trying to decide if I liked it or not, but I don't. So I hold Shift and then, or no, hold Control when you're deselecting points, when you're drawing a box over them, and now I'll hit E, and there we go. I start to get my lip. And the solidify modifier we had applied before. Oh, we did not apply it to this one earlier. So let's start doing that so we see what kind of shape we start to get. So we can do solidify, and now we get a thickness going on it. I think that's thick enough. I'm gonna leave it at the default. Oops. Just broke it for a second. 0.01. There we go. I want to make sure that I'm offsetting in the right direction. So if I change the offset from -1 to 1, I can see that that's actually clipping with itself right here. So that's not what I want. I want the offset where it was at -1. There we go. So it grows outward. We still have some shape weirdness there. So as I was saying, in order to get the topology really cleaned up, you can always use the remesh tool. I think this comes in really useful, especially when you're importing geometries from other places. We can just grab the remesh tool, and we can hit whether it's a smooth object, it's a sharp object, or it's a voxel. And then it's actually remeshing it like too basic of a level. So I find that octree depth set to 8 or 9 might be slow at first to calculate. But there you can see it starts to rebuild it. We can hit 9 to get closer to the real shape. Actually, I think I want to keep it down to 4 and mess with the scale of the cells. So instead of 0.9, going to 0.3. Basically, the scale, or larger. The scale determines how sort of big those levels go through to re-topologize the whole geometry. But your octree depth is kind of looking for is how much of the geometry is it re-representing. So I am getting a little bit of weirdness there, and not really solving the problem that I want. So maybe if I switch it over to sharp rather than smooth, that's a bit closer. I think with the sharp one and the smoothing brush, whoops, yeah, keep it at 9. But yeah, there we go. But yeah, definitely also need to go over to the mirror here and increase my merge distance. That's why I'm getting that split there. There's some points that got pulled apart, and they're too far apart to come back together right now. So I'll just increase my merge distance in the mirror modifier. There we go. Now it's a little circle. Just make it a bit bigger. And we close it out. Okay, so I'm pretty good with how this is going to end up looking. I'm going to turn off my modifiers here, such as solidify, and I'll keep the subdivision. Now, to start adding some more detail, right? Let's say if I go into the front view here of the vehicle, and I want to start adding onto this mesh. Well, I mean, I need the plane for the mesh material too. If we talked about this thing going forward, I'm actually just going to duplicate the entire object. So Shift D, turn off, not turn off solidify, but actually just eliminate an edge here. No, actually, yeah, what I want was actually the previous version of this geometry. Because as I extruded these points, I now actually want to eliminate all these points on this face, delete faces and edges, so that I get that original deleted one too much. So if I Alt double click here on this edge again, and then deselect these edge ones as I did before, and delete those away, delete faces and edges. Now the solidify tool here will actually extrude. It'll extrude that geometry forward. Yep, this is why I should have copy pasted that from earlier. That's okay. What I can do is just select all these faces, or all these, yep, hit faces, select all these faces, and we're going to just assign it a new material. So we'll also call it car paint. We'll use car paint 001 and assign that to the front. So that in the material preview, we can differentiate that face from the edge. And I see that I missed some. There we go. And select the material and assign from the panel. Cool. So Alt-H will bring back everything that we've hidden. And if I now hide just the front, we can see the hood in reference, or in relation to this front piece. And I can do these final tweaks on this and keep all the modifiers that I've used before, just getting this to meet the hood properly. So we'll go into vertex mode and we'll select set by set here, pulling it up to meet that car face. And if I want any hard edges, like we had seen before, we had seen how to crease an object. So once I have this fitting right there, because I want this edge, I'll select the edge mode right here. If we see on the side, it's actually somewhere in the middle there, so it might be this edge. I start moving this in 3D, and I see on the left window how it'll fit the shape right here. I can go into my crease settings here for the edge data that we had brought before, and I can pull that edge out to be a bit sharper. And I can do the same for these three edges that are sitting just behind it. There we go. And increase the mean crease there so that we pull that shape back. This is the duplicate version. And we can turn our things back on, so solidify and remesh. And I do the same thing to the top, right? So if I hit tab into this one, select this edge here, so this edge should actually be meeting this point on the hood, that little corner edge. and we'll increase its crease so that we arrive at a sharper edge. And we want to do the same thing for all the pieces behind as well. All right. I'm just going to pull that 1 point forward. So turning off my remesh and solidify now that I checked in with that. I don't want it facing down, I want it facing up. So I'm just going to go ahead and select that from point and pull it up. And there we go. We did say that this whole piece is actually supposed to sit a bit behind the hood so that it cuts back. And now if we see from the side view, we're following that shape of the car more closely. Great. All right, so that's how we start adding a bit more detail. This can actually take, this can obviously take many levels. We go in over here and we select the main body of the car. We can now select the singular set of faces for this whole situation here, which is like another grill piece. Or I could actually, if I wanted to just keep and build around that, I could select the face that I had just worked on, copy that over with Shift D, and then from the front view, actually like fit that into, that's probably going to be a bit more work than just pulling out the surface. But if it were similar enough, right? Like say for example, I mean, if you can get away with doing as many modifiers as you can, because like say for this whole fender, if this is a whole wireframe, I can just select that inner cube that I just worked on. If I select this piece first, and then I select that front panel that I had just worked on, and I hit Control L, copy modifiers, right? If that was meant to have a lip as well, I could just turn on the solidify for this one too. I think in this case, I'm adding thickness because I haven't created an edge for it. Oh, I was messing with the wrong one. Solidify, here we go. Turn it on first would help to see it. There we go. Set that to 1 or 0.01. And again, with the normals, making sure that your normals are always in the right direction. So tab, A, select that whole panel, go to mesh, normals, flip. And once I tab out of that, I have my thickness going for me now. So it's only building forward because I don't actually have that lip modeled into it. And slowing down my computer a lot, so I can't quite slide around it. I have to type in numbers. But you get the point, right? We can just copy all the modifiers that happen from one piece into another piece. So it's worth taking one piece far enough until you start working on all the other ones, and then start fitting all that around the car. If I move this whole panel back on the x-axis, I can reveal the work that I did on top of it. And possibly even just start continuing to build like this over and over to get this concept shape out. This pinch is actually working really good in my favor to build out that face. If you wanted to, let's say like just add a lip out here, if I weren't going to extrude this whole face out, or if I wanted to make this edge on the body a bit sharper, I mean, we already went through the mean crease over here, so that becomes a sharper edge for the car. But say here where it's kind of like double situation, or double situation, it's like a faceted here. So if I hit these edges and extrude this out, and I added the solidify piece, that could be a quick way to add like some structural piece. If we add solidify now, rather than adding a thickness to this model, it should actually, I think what I want to do here is not extrude those edges, or at least After extruding those edges, extrude these faces. Not use the solidify modifier. So that can add, those little pockets that are meant to catch air real easily onto the model. You got to make sure that your modifiers aren't totally messing up your model here, or creating pinches that you don't want to have seen, imperfections that you don't want to have seen on the surface. But yeah, these are just some quick little modeling tips once it gets to getting into more details, is start extracting these other faces, start pulling them out, start messing with the edge crease, and start adding in some modifiers to shape those pieces. If I were to link these materials, Control L, you can get a pretty cool rendered view if I have any lights in this scene, which it doesn't seem like I do, or at least they're not pointed at the object or bright enough. And hide my reference images. Yep, we can see those neat little details come through when the light hits it just right, which on a vehicle is going to be really obvious because all this metallic paint really shows a lot of detail of your model. So either getting some imperfections to hide, get surface imperfections, so like added to the texture, like smudges or inconsistencies in the paint or in the reflection of it. Covered that in the photo studio video. But adding those inconsistencies can hide some of the model imperfections, also if you place it just right. Because also, if you just have a clean material or a perfect geometry, sometimes it's a bit uncanny too. So like adding these little inconsistencies to the texture or to the model itself can also help a bit in selling it as a real thing, as a real physical object occupying real space. I want to move this light over to the front so I can catch a little bit of the side there. Moving the light closer. There we go. Yep, not the most flattering light, but getting the point across of just, yeah, building out face by face off of the main body of the car. So that's where I'm going to cut it out tonight. I'm going to build out these other panels on my own, probably off the stream. And the next time I come onto the stream, we'll get into a real high level detail modeling in order to get the headlight. So that'll be not just what we just covered about creases and solid modifiers, but for the headlight, we'll actually get into how to project certain things onto other surfaces. So since the headlight has all these like inner geometry elements going on behind the glass, we have to also model the glass on top of it. So there's just a lot of layering going on here, and a nice little technique for that is to build a backplate, like a main surface for all these, and then actually just sort of throw these other elements to be then wrapped onto those base surfaces. So yeah, that's another little modeling technique that helps a lot once it starts getting into details. So I'll see, there's a couple plugins I have lined up to look into in order to show those to get that process done. But yeah, thanks for watching today's stream. It got really into the weeds on modeling little details on the edges for the models, but that's something that now just gets repeated in order to fit out all these pieces of the car. So hope to see you there. Thanks for joining in.